I'm Sharon Knight. Thanks so much for joining us for our Building Community Check-In. We started these shows when we started quarantine because we knew a lot of people were starting to feel isolated and didn't know where to get accurate information and just needed some help getting through these times. So we started the Facebook Live show 3 days a week, and now we're doing them 2 days a week. It's a brand new experiment for us. We want to try to keep that community connectedness that we've been known for all of the 40 years that we've been in existence. So these shows will provide updated information about COVID-19, resources that are available to people to help them through this time, updates on activities across the community, sometimes inspirational stories, and sometimes some things to enhance your well-being. We're using the platform because there's a chat feature, and we can see comments of people as they join us, and hopefully I can respond to questions. Sometimes there's a little lag, and so I may not see it right away, but if you write a comment or a question, I sure will get back to you at some point because we want to make sure that we're staying connected with you. We are posting the videos of Facebook afterwards because we know that even though some people watch us live, others come back later on, sometimes weeks later, to hear the show and get the information. And so if you are listening to this right now, please remember the content and who you think might benefit from it, and please share the link with them. We want to get this information out to as many people as possible. So if you need resources right now, we do have a section on our website that at the top is a banner that says COVID-19 resources, and there's lots of different opportunities, there's resources, there's information sheets that might be helpful to you, or to anybody that you know in the community. So good source of information, that's at hopecommunities.org. And also you can email us, or any of your associates can email us at info@hopecommunities.org at any time. If you have questions, comments, if you need some assistance, we will be there for you. We'll get that email and get right back to you. So I do like to talk about a little bit of news. For the last 5 days in a row, the United States has hit single-day records for new coronavirus cases. Colorado is also starting to see another increase in cases. So this is the second week in a row that we've seen those, and the state health officials think that at least some of it is because we have loosened up activities during after the safe at home section of our quarantine. And so please remember that we do need to still be cautious. Dr. Fauci spoke at the Aspen Ideas Festival this weekend, and he was talking about young people. He said they don't realize that while they're getting infected, they are not going to exhibit the symptoms very openly, but they are really possibly going to pass this on to other people who could suffer more seriously than them. And so he says, like it or not, by getting infected yourself, you are not in a vacuum. You're part of the propagation of the dynamics of a pandemic, and you have to, on your own, take responsibility to protect yourself, but really also a social responsibility to not be part of the problem, instead to focus on being part of a solution. By that, he means that before we get a vaccine, it would still be really important for people to keep social distancing and wear masks when you're around people. We have heard that even, for instance, coming up on 4th of July, that you might be able to get together with a few more friends, still not huge groups, but a few more friends, but still keep that social distance, still keep your masks on, and even with things like don't all crowd around the grill, bring your own silverware so other people aren't touching them. So things like that might seem overly cautious, but really make all the difference in the world in terms of not spreading the virus. Today is the last day that you can submit your primary ballots. So you receive those in the mail. Please If you have not already done so, drop that in a ballot box that's around town. Your voice does really matter, and I hope that you get in there and make that happen. There are a group of Denver faith leaders that are starting a task force that's going to examine police practices across Denver and consider how to dismantle the system and rebuild it from the ground up. So I'm mentioning that to you because there are a few different groups that are working together. The Denver Citizen Oversight Board, the Interfaith Alliance of Colorado, the Conflict Center. So they are all working to try to make our policing much more amenable to the full population, and these are open meetings. So the first of 3 community meetings will be held virtually via Zoom at 6 p.m. tonight. And information about how to join that meeting via Zoom can be found on the Denver Citizen Oversight Board's Facebook page. So if you want to be part of that broad community conversation, please go to that website for that Facebook page and see if you can get into that Zoom call. Hope Communities is also going to be hosting its own dialogue with police, neighbors, and community partners this Thursday morning. Hope's vision for our whole organization is a community in which everyone has a safe place to call home and the resources they need to thrive. The safe part is becoming more challenging of late because there's been an uptick in crime across the city, not just from the protests, and many of these crimes are happening in neighborhoods that Hope Communities has properties. So we're very, very concerned about this. We do know that summertime often brings an increase in crime, but this seems to be worse. We also know that with the pandemic, people are frustrated, there's more stress on them, people have loss of work, maybe less income, they're in their neighborhoods more, and there's more people crowded in the house or the home more, and so there is more stress and maybe more explosive opportunities because people are worried so much. And I also think that the lack of income, if someone has lost their job or ability to bring in as much income, also contributes to things like people not having their medications, not having enough food. So there's lots of factors that could be contributing to increased crime, but we really want to find some solutions to this because we want to keep people safe. So I would love to hear from any of our listeners before Thursday about what you are seeing in terms of crime across Denver. What are some very specific things that you're seeing? And also if you have any ideas for what we, and by that I mean our broad community, the police, nonprofit partners, housing agencies like ours, other agencies, what can we do to improve safety for everyone across Denver? So if you have any of those ideas, feel free to send them to info@hopecommunities.org, and I will gather them and make sure that we communicate some of those ideas to our partners on Thursday morning. If you have a very strong desire to participate in that meeting, let us know that too. A lot of the participants will be through Zoom, so just email us and let us know. So my quote for today is, "Strength does not come from winning. Your struggles develop your strengths. When you go through hardships and decide not to surrender, that is strength." That's by Arnold Schwarzenegger. I'm saying that because we're going to talk about safety today. And I don't think that this conversation is about winners and losers necessarily. I think that safety in our neighborhoods and our communities comes from all of us. It takes a village, as they say, to create a welcoming and safe home for our families. And so there is a particular strength in that, because you may not always get everything you want. You don't have to surrender, but you need to be able to flex and respond and try to come up with innovative ways to help everyone. to have a safer, better family environment. So I'm going to talk about safety in 3 ways today. One is to talk about what to do in the case of an emergency. The second is related to tips that you can do to improve your own community safety. And the third relates to things that people who live at Hope Properties can do, and they're not necessarily in that order. So number one, let's talk about emergencies. When there is a real emergency that you see in your community, it's important that you call 911 to get to police, fire department, or ambulance. If someone's being hurt, if there is violence involved, if there's evidence of illegal activity, if something is threatened, if someone's in serious medical trouble, you need to call 911. When you call, you will be asked to give your name. You can be asked to have your name anonymous, but you will be asked for your name, your location, and what the emergency is. I actually called 911 a week ago because someone was having what appeared to be a mental health emergency behind one of our buildings in Five Points, and I was asked all those things. Plus I was asked, what is this person's height, weight, clothing, ethnicity, age. They wanted to know if they're going to identify the right person, I guess. They also asked me if the person was having trouble breathing, had a cough, or seemed to be taking drugs. Those last few things I didn't know, and I said I'm not getting close enough to figure those out. But and did they have a temperature? I'm not going to stop and check that, but they will ask you that, and of course they're doing that because they need to take extra precautions themselves because of the COVID-19 virus. So give as much information as you can, and this again is for real emergencies. If you have to talk to the police about something else, there are non-emergency numbers that you can call. Now, if you feel really threatened, can you call 911? You can. And if the police don't come right away, and you have to indicate the severity of the situation that you really feel threatened. If they don't come right away, call again and say it's your second call. And if you believe that you are really threatened, hopefully somebody will talk with you and guide you to get you maybe in a little bit safer situation. But you need to really share that information. And as well, if there is criminal activity, if you see violence, you have to describe that. Don't just say you have to come quick, but I see a gun. I see people who are being hurt. Something like that really tells the specifics as much as possible. I had a client in the past who was involved in a domestic violence situation. She called 911. She felt very threatened, but then her attacker came towards her, and she didn't want to end the call. She ended up keeping the call open, and the phone slid under the chair, which really, in the end, saved her life because the 911 responders could actually hear what was going on, and they got there as quick as possible. So heaven, forbid that anything like that would happen, but if you're in a situation where you have to get out of the way or leave your phone, you can still keep it open, and hopefully some of that message will go forward. Now, what happens if you are out of your call area? The FCC actually has a ruling that no matter what network you are in, 911 calls must go through. So even if your provider doesn't have good service, somebody should pick that up. It's an absolute. And as long as you have battery power, you should be able to get through if there is any signal at all. Okay, so number 2, I'm going to talk about things that Hope residents can remember for safety around our properties. And this also obviously could be applicable for other apartment buildings and sometimes for other residential single family homes as well. But the first one is definitely an apartment. So don't buzz people into the building that don't live there or you don't know. That happens all the time because people get insistent, they've left their key. If they live there, they might have done that and you might not know them. But also people from the community want to get in the building. Sometimes they'll keep buzzing until somebody answers. You should not buzz unless you know the person, that they live there or that you know them from other circumstances. Lock your doors when you're home. So also lock your car doors because there has been a lot of theft for cars in Denver recently. If you see someone that does not belong on the property, call the security company that we at Hope have given you the number for, and I'm sure other apartments also have that. So this is a non-emergency instance usually, unless they are doing something illegal, but if they just don't belong there, let your security company know that. And if you see some kind of a disturbance, loud music, things being pushed around, maybe incidental vandalism, which is not good, but it's not an emergency, then you could call your security company for that too. If it really does escalate to an emergency situation, then of course, call 911. If you are living in an apartment building, please let your property staff know that you've called security or the police. We want to be able to track issues, to take care of trends that we see, to interact with police and make sure that they hear our voice as well as yours. And I do know that many people are nervous about calling the police, and so they will actually call the property manager first. That's not going to be that helpful for you. You need to be able to call the police if you have an issue, and they should respond and be respectful to you just like your property manager would be. So we need to make sure that you make the calls to the police for real emergency, to the security company if it's a disturbance but not absolute emergency, and then to property manager just later to let them know what's going on. Also report to your property management anything that could hinder security, broken locks, security gates that aren't working, a common and repetitive trend that people are being let in the building without really living there or having permission. They're just buzzing to try to get in. We want to know if there are common breaches that are happening on site. Even if staff aren't there, and maybe particularly if staff aren't there, is there a habit that when staff leave, that's when these things happen? So we need to understand some of those activities and the regularity of them so that we can help to address some of the solutions. We also, a simple thing like when you take your garbage out or move things from your car, try to just do that in the daylight and not be alone without people if you are worried. I know some people work swing shift, and so if you come home after swing shift, it might not be the best time to do chores if you think that there's anything going on in the streets. So just be careful and try to get into your house as soon as you can. And of course, make sure that your kids are supervised and that they're in a safe place. Make sure that if you see someone who is a stranger in the play area, for instance, that you report that. And of course, teach your kids all about the stranger danger so that they don't interact with people that they don't know or that could potentially bring harm to them. So these are common sense things, but sometimes when you get caught in the heat of the moment, and if somebody's watching you, or if somebody says, oh, that's no big deal, sometimes you won't report those things or take those precautions, but I'm just going to ask that you consider that because we really do want to keep you safe. Now, what are some things that we can do in the general community? It's really important to know your neighborhood. So knowledge is really a powerful tool when it comes to combating crime. So you should know who your neighbors are, kind of understand what their habits are. You don't have to be, too nosy, but when are they regularly home? What kind of activity do they regularly have there? And if there's something really unusual, notice that. You have a right to report someone on property who's not supposed to be there. You absolutely do. And you live on private property, and you and your kids deserve to be safe. So if there's somebody wandering on, or there are groups of people who are loitering on property space, please let us know. We need to be able to take care of that. It's really good to organize, talk with your neighbors about what you're seeing. You might even want to consider developing a neighborhood watch. So kind of watch out for each other. Watch out for each other's homes, watch out for each other's kids. So if you see something suspicious, I mean, you can let your neighbors know, or you can remind their kids, if the neighbors aren't right there, to be careful of that. We want to build that community network where we are actually helping each other to have a much better, happier, safer community. So we really believe that strongly at Hope Communities. So we do try to have community events to bring people together. Of course, it's a little bit tougher now, so it will really be inherent for you to be able to do that a little bit in different ways, and we'll do our best to try to make that happen. We've still had some small community events, for instance, at Hinnenbrook tomorrow. We will have food distribution, and we'll have some partners there in the community gardens. So we won't have a lot of people together, but we will have spaced out program areas, and there's an opportunity for you to come and at least see some of your neighbors, so that there's a little bit of connectedness there. So it's important to talk to law enforcement. So all of the properties for Hope are in the District 2. And we have tried to build relationships with the police. They do come to some of our community events. We also have a frequent communication. I met with a commander and a lieutenant and a sergeant last week, and was talking about some of the issues that we had. And I respectfully said I was going to be a thorn in their side until we got some of these things taken care of, and they understood that, because they also have the underlying goal to make our communities safe. So I also think that as a community, and we have to work on this with our council members and some other partners, we need to increase our lighting. So lighting on the streets, lighting in our parks, lighting in our alleys. We at Hope have increased the lighting right around our properties, and we have seen some benefit from that, but the more general areas on the perimeter of the properties don't have enough, and that's something that I think we really need to advocate for. It's also, if we can, if you can, and in this case, Hope is doing this for you, we're incorporating security cameras so that we can monitor activity and that we can identify people who are committing crime. So we actually do submit video to the police for crimes that we have captured, and that will help them to reach out and take care of the person who perpetrated that crime, at least to try to find them. It'll be a lot easier if they have photos of that, but we're not going to know to get those photos and to share them with police unless we hear from the people who live there. So please let us know. If you see something, it's good to call the police, but then you can also say, at our place, for instance, I live at a Hope Communities property, I'm seeing a crime right now, it really needs immediate attention, I see weapons that are drawn, and by the way, Hope does have cameras, so we should be able to get pictures, but we want you to take care of this now because it's a life-threatening event. So try to remember all of those things, and that the police really should respond. And so it's also important to keep the property looking good. If a property is decrepit, or it seems uncared for, or looks like no one is really paying attention to it, criminals might settle in. One area that we've seen some gang activities in alleys, they're not always as kept up as maybe our apartment buildings are, there's less pedestrian activity and people aren't paying as much attention to those areas. And yet that crime in the alleyways does affect residents and impairs people's ability to go out, even if it's just down the street, so past the alleyway. So try to keep the property looking good. It's one of those things that might be subliminal, but it does really make a difference. And, just try to watch the time you're out, particularly if you're alone. I mentioned this a little bit before, but don't walk in places that are isolated, where you believe there could be crime. And if you're out alone at night, please be extra careful. Don't get distracted by listening to your cell phone or music through headphones. Stay alert. And if you get that little spidey sense that something is wrong, listen to it. Your instincts are often right on. So these are some important things to consider to stay safe. There is way too much going on in the world today, and so many things that could happen to us to keep us from feeling safe, between protests and gang activity and COVID-19. I mean, there's just lots of things going on. So we've got to be thoughtful and intentional about our space and about our actions so that we stay safe and so that the people around us and our kids stay safe as well. So again, as a reminder, we are going to have a meeting on Thursday morning to discuss crime, particularly in the East Colfax neighborhood. And I really believe that it's going to take all of us to address this issue. We need to watch out for each other. We need to take lots of precautions. We need to have a good relationship with the police, and they need to respond immediately to emergency requests. And we need to get our city council to make sure we have better lighting. So it's going to take all of us to resolve, or at least to improve, this issue in a significant way. So let me know any crimes that you have seen or any ideas that you have to improve safety in our communities. Send me an email at info@hopecommunities.org to let me know about that, and I will share that information on Thursday morning. So a second quote that goes along with this issue, I might have said this one before. We are only as strong as we are united, and as weak as we are divided. That is from Harry Potter and the Goblet of Fire, written, of course, by J.K. Rowling. But it is true that we are strong when we're united, and so I've got to know what you need. We've got to be able to communicate that. We've got to work together to keep our communities safe. So, quick thing that we do every time we have a Facebook show is to share a review about a book. We often have a volunteer, staff member to do a book review, and almost all of the books are downloadable from the Denver Public Library. So today's book is being reviewed by Jamie Pollard. She is reviewing The Joy of Movement by Kelly Mcgonigal. It's a book about exercise and how it helps people to find happiness, hope, connection, and courage. And she kind of blends science and storytelling and brings in neuroscience and psychology and all kinds of different sciences, as well as her own memoirs, to come up with a concept that really should be able to improve our status in life in terms of well-being, self-expression, connection. And so it's really an interesting book, and it ties in, physiologically to some of the symptoms of depression, anxiety, and loneliness. So during this time when we are under a lot of stress, reading a book like this could be really insightful and help us to create new habits. And you might have noticed a trend from Jamie, because last week she was on our show helping us to remember exercises for mindfulness, and now she's sharing this book about how movement can help us, all helping us to take care of ourselves. So thank you, Jamie, for doing the review. That review will be posted in a little bit on our Facebook page. And as I will add, as I often do, that just getting outside to walk or run or bike is a wonderful way to experience mindfulness and just refresh. I do it as often as possible. This last weekend I walked 17 miles. Lots of thinking, lots of refreshing to do, but it really helped. And of course I did, when you're walking, if there's nobody around, you can take your mask off, which is lovely to have fresh air while you're walking, but then to have that mask with you so when you are with other people that you're taking every precaution possible. Hope you get out to walk. I hope you find ways to help take care of yourself. We want you to be well. We want you to be safe. Please reach out to us if there's anything that we can do to help you with that process, or if you have any questions or need assistance, just email us at info@hopecommunities.org. Thanks so much and have a great day. Bye.